All right, welcome everybody. I'm glad everyone came. It is my pleasure now to get this started. I'm going to introduce our speaker. So hello everyone, I'm Professor Carolyn Christensen, Chair of the Accounting Department here at Westchester Community College, and the recipient of the Joseph and Sophia Abeles Endowed Faculty Chair for Business. Welcome to this exciting presentation on blockchain. Thank you to the Abeles who made presentations such as this possible with their generous funding of faculty chairs at our college, as you just heard. And a special thank you to Barbara Abeles, who is here with us today. I'm so glad you could join us. It's my great pleasure to introduce Dr. Sean Stein-Smith, today's speaker. Sean is a professor at the City University of New York, Lehman College. He serves on the advisory board of the Wall Street Blockchain Alliance, where he chairs the accounting working group. Sean sits on the advisory board of Gilded, a Techstars 19 company, and serves as a strategic advisor to the central bank digital currency think tank. Sean's been recognized and honored by the AICPA, the AAA, New Jersey CPAs, New York State Society of CPAs, the IMA, and CPA Practice Advisor as a thought leader in the profession, with a focus on emerging technologies and innovative thinking. Sean is also the immediate past chairperson of the New Jersey CPA's Emerging Technologies Interest Group, where he hosts the New Jersey CPA Tech Talk podcast, and is president-elect of the New York State Society of CPA's Manhattan Bronx chapter. He was also a visiting research fellow at the American Institute for Economic Research and has a book due for publication with the Institute in the fourth quarter of 2021. We're greatly honored to have him here with us today, and it is my great pleasure to introduce Dr. Sean Stein-Smith. Sean, I'm turning it over to you.
All right, Carolyn, thank you so much. So I am just going to reclaim the host role here real quick, and then I'm going to start sharing my screen here. So I'm so happy to be here, so amped to be here, and I'm honestly really excited for our conversation here today. I'm going to pull up my presentation right here because we have a ton to cover. Because we have a ton to cover because there's a lot going on out there right now. As it's really sort of linked to blockchain, crypto, all the rest. So I do know that I only have you all for about 8 hours today. Kidding. But I could easily, be here for 8 hours, 2 days, a whole week talking about everything going on. So I am going to try to sort of touch on sort of a few headlines out there in terms of oversight, roles, compliance, enforcement, all the rest, and to then after that, really try to unpack what actually blockchain is, what actually crypto is, how they are, different from other currency options out there, IT options out there, and then also try to hone in on a few other industry applications, right? All of us know or have heard of blockchain, Bitcoin, but I think it's really pertinent to always try to hone in on other industry applications, like aerospace, food safety, other industries out there. So I have a whole bunch to cover. So I am going to try to get through all of it right now. And if there are any questions, comments during my talk, hop off of mute, drop them into the chat, and I'll try to answer them during our time here. Although I also do know that we have some time at the end for questions. So I'm just going to put everybody just on mute to hopefully cut down on any of that background echo. But if you do have any comments or questions, obviously hop off of mute and ask them away. So to kick off, I won't bore you going over all of this background about me, but I am incredibly busy in this area, right? Blockchain, crypto, everything linked to it. Really, my sort of main area is to try to hone in on how these tools impact accounting, audit, tax, but actually overall business at large. So I do a lot of talking, training, corporate advising outside of the higher ed area too. So I do have some more on that later. But to try to sort of get this underway here, right? market update, blockchain basics, crypto basics, and also at the end, I have some resources for any faculty members who are here on the call, because I do know in a earlier talk that I gave, I believe it was in April, I was actually talking on having courses developed and being offered at Lehman. Turns out after some, confusion, right at the end of August, 2 of them are actually up and running through a external grant program. So I'll have some more on that at the very end for any faculty folks here who are interested in that. But off the top here, what's going on, right? In terms of sort of the oversight compliance efforts underway on blockchain and Bitcoin, crypto, all the rest, right? Because I always feel, prior to really trying to pop the hood on any sort of complicated area, right? And blockchain and crypto are complicated, they're fast moving, and there is no one person out there who has all of the answers. And if they're advertising otherwise, they're ignorant. So there are plenty of new people who are involved. Yellen, Gensler, newly instituted heads of the Treasury and the SEC, both of which have been less pro-crypto or more hands-on at the very least, as opposed to the folks who had been in those roles in the past. So they're obviously incredibly engaged hands-on, which on the one hand is good, I think, but on the other hand can kind of cause some agita out there too, and some heartburn. So what is this from Coinbase, right? Right, Coinbase is probably the easiest way and the most common way, right, for individuals and institutions to actually get exposure and access to Bitcoin, crypto, all the rest, right? It's a SEC regulated company, publicly traded, and so it's the biggest platform here in the US. So how many of you, by either a hand raise or a comment in the chat, own any sort of underlying crypto? Bitcoin, altcoins, all the rest. All right, we have some hands going up. I love it. We have 4 people, 6 people, 7 people, 8. All right, like 9. All right, like it. Well, also then me too, right? Okay. So so in terms of all that, excellent. So, and I would assume that even if you aren't currently a customer at Coinbase, you probably know sort of how it works and how it intersects with other applications out there. So as I was saying earlier, there has been quite a bit of increase in enforcement. And actually, I should pause here. I do have a little blockchain mug, so I am a real blockchain geek. Just heads up, by the way, warning you all. Okay, so the entity itself, right, Coinbase, BlockFi, have been under increased pressure as of late, right? Because as blockchain becomes more mainstream and as crypto becomes more mainstream, obviously there is going to be a uptick in the efforts to try to have some compliance efforts out there. So I won't dive into these too much, but I have hyperlinks to all of the articles here in the deck, and I will be sure to have my deck be available afterwards. So, as we all know, adding in politics into anything always improves the outcome, right? And during the summer, crypto went off the back burner and right up onto the front burner as a direct result. So in the $1.5 trillion infrastructure bill currently being argued about right now, and I believe has a vote coming up tomorrow, but back at high summer, in this 2,700 page bill, 2,700 pages, there are 2 pages directly linked to crypto in terms of how organizations who are using crypto, approving crypto, getting paid in crypto, authorizing crypto transactions have to be in compliance. And so basically, right off the top, is that anybody who qualifies as a broker now has to issue the exact same quantity and quality of compliance tax paperwork, basically, as an entity like a Coinbase, who is a publicly traded entity with with hundreds of employees able to handle that. So it has a big picture impact because it's always important to note that obviously crypto and blockchain are not a US based industry. It's a global conversation. And so any actions that are either taken here or taken elsewhere are going to impact how it's used, how it's understood, and then how common crypto and blockchain actually get. Again, I won't dwell on these items too much, but I always feel it's important to have a background and sort of a understanding of sort of the current state of blockchain crypto prior to really trying to understand how these tools operate. And so there had been some hope of some edited terminology in this bill. Turns out it did not happen. And so the original language, which caused a real flurry of pushback from organizations in the blockchain industry, is still in the bill as we speak. And so, yeah, okay. So in terms of the impact of this, right, from a business point of view, accounting point of view, tax point of view, educational point of view, it's all going to really come ultimately down to how this bill is actually interpreted at the IRS and at the Treasury, right? Because as a person who has some lawyers in the family, I am well aware that it is not always the actual terminology in a document. It's how that language is then in turn applied or interpreted. Okay, and more headlines, more compliance, more enforcement out there. DeFi, we probably aren't going to have time to really dive too much into this here, but basically anytime you hear the word DeFi mentioned, it's basically trying to have banking products and services, except I don't have to have a bank in there. So it's trying to have banking while actually cutting out banks. So it's a very interesting area. It's a very high profile area, and it's grown incredibly fast in the current year. So just to add some sort of context there, in January of 2020, it was a $500 million industry. As of August of the current year, 2021, there were over $100 billion in assets allocated to projects in this area. So that's grown incredibly fast. So it is an area to watch and just try to keep an eye on as the compliance efforts really do hone in on more centralized entities like Coinbase. And as if all of that isn't enough, there was a $500 million hack that just happened towards the end of August. Okay, so obviously bad news. Okay, there was a $500 million hack. Bad news off the top, but it gets better because after 24 hours or so, half the funds got returned. And as of right now, I believe it's about 95% of the funds have been handed back to the organization. And in a Reddit AMA Ask Me Anything, the hacker who was in charge of this effort basically to hack basically came out and was trying to say the whole point of the hack was to try to highlight the importance of internal controls, cyber policies, and other process controls in entities operating in this space. So there's a lot going on, and as if all of that isn't enough, there are now actually countries using Bitcoin and other crypto as a medium of doing business. So there's a ton going on. There are lots of headlines out there, and it's very easy to get overwhelmed, right? I get it, right? I've been involved in blockchain crypto, I'd say really since the back half of 2015. And it's still confusing, right? There's still a ton going on. So there are a lot of headlines out there. There's a lot going on. El Salvador, Brazil, Cuba. So it really is an international story, and it's a lot easier to get involved in crypto now as opposed to even during 2020, right? And I'll just sort of wrap up my market update here. right? Before diving into what blockchain is and actually how it operates. There are banks now offering services, which if you actually go back to 2008 when the original Bitcoin blockchain white paper got posted online, the whole idea of blockchain, it was to cut out banks. So it's quite interesting that as we end 2021, every major banking institution in the world is offering blockchain services, crypto services. On top of, don't forget, MasterCard, Visa, PayPal, and eBay now all have options for anybody, individuals, institutions, to pay or to get paid in Bitcoin or other crypto assets. So it's incredibly easy to get involved in this area, right? Either online via PayPal on your phone, Coinbase on your phone, or at your bank. So with all of that ease, convenience, and kind of understanding it, right? What actually are we actually talking about here? And also to just add some context to how banks are involved right here, it's all as a direct result of some updates out of the OCC, the Office of the Comptroller of the Currency, right? Issued in the fourth quarter of 2020 and in the first quarter of the current year. Basically, the OCC said that it's okay for banks to process transactions in certain crypto assets, not Bitcoin, but other certain assets out there. And also to just add some extra hot sauce out here, there are over 10,000 different crypto assets out there right now being actively traded. So it's a very busy space, very hectic space, and all of that is also why, on the one hand, right, there is so much interest, right? All of us here right now talking about it. There is so much interest in this space, but it's also very important to understand actually what we're getting ourselves into. Now, I'm an advocate of crypto and blockchain. I have posters, I have ties, socks, pins, on this subject. So I'm a pro blockchain guy, but there are risks, and I am going to cover those too, right? Always got to be balanced. And the OCC updates, I won't actually go through them in too much depth, but basically, and so why does it say that other financials are not involved yet? Terry, I see that you asked a question. Well, so the main issue there, Terry, is that there's a bit of ambiguity out there, right, in terms of sort of what institutions are able to offer, and then what kinds of institutions are able to offer products and crypto-linked actual services. So a quick example of this is that I was just talking about the OCC, right, in the fourth quarter of 2020 and earlier during our current year 2021, had authorized banks to actually process, validate, and transact in certain crypto assets. But as you all might have heard of, we had a vote last fall, and so as a result of that vote last fall, I believe it was in November, right? There was a presidential vote or something, and so then after that, there are new people in charge of the agencies, right? The OCC, SEC, and the whole alphabet soup gang. And so as a result of that turnover at the heads of those agencies, there is now some ambiguity as to how these previously issued updates and rules are going to be either continued, canceled, edited, or all the rest. So there has been some cooling off in terms of sort of new institutions offering services, but basically every major bank, every major credit union can offer blockchain linked services or actually crypto linked offerings also. And I hope I answered your actual question. Okay, so headlines are always fun, right? But actually, what are we talking about when we're trying to talk about blockchain, right? Because blockchain is a buzzword, it's a hot topic. I talk about it constantly, but it really is a umbrella term, right? And there is still some confusion as to actually what blockchain is, but off the top, it's a umbrella term. Like auditing is a umbrella term, right? There are all kinds of different components and types of audits also. So the term blockchain is a umbrella term, it's an overarching term, but it really is not always a ideal fit for every problem, or for every company, or for every issue. And I always feel it's important to highlight that up front, right? That obviously there are upsides to blockchain. I'll be covering those right now, but it's not always going to work for every company in every instance. Okay. But the issues are how to actually get blockchain to process transactions at the capacity needed to be adopted by enterprises, right? Because I do understand the whole idea of Bitcoin, it was to be decentralized currency and alternative payment system. But in order for any tool, for any transactional medium to actually hit the mainstream, it has to be used by enterprises, right? Whether you are cool with that or you aren't happy with that, it's the way that it ultimately is. Okay, and then it's also hard to use, right? It is kind of complicated, and I want to bore you, yep, with the actual operational guts of it. But a good way to try to think about blockchain in terms of how it fits, right, is if anybody has ever used Access, Microsoft Access, or even any sort of cloud-based sharing service, right? Microsoft in the cloud, Google Drive, other items like that. All of those are examples of a DLT, a distributed ledger technology. Basically, that's all that a blockchain is, right? It's a platform that allows me, Carolyn, and anybody else who's a part of that network to add information, to edit information, and to then update information also, right? And every single blockchain out there is a form of this basically open access data storage. So all that blockchain is ultimately, it's a record of transactions. Stop. Full stop, right? It's not magic. There are components that are going to make it different and better as opposed to other IT models out there. But all that blockchain is a record of transactions out there. And I'll dive into that more in a bit. But a good sort of fact to keep in mind is that every single DLT platform out there can be edited, modified, updated by its users, but only a blockchain uses blocks, right, to update that underlying record. And each block, so anybody who's ever had to deal with payroll or AP or heard about it in a course, right? I don't issue individual checks to people as a institution. I batch my payroll, basically batch them all together and then upload them all at once. On a blockchain, those batched transactions are called blocks. And so that's the main difference here between blockchain and other DLT options out there. And I probably put everybody into a coma at that point. So I'll keep rolling forward. I'm a little wonky, nerdy. So, but first things first, to really understand sort of what blockchain is, and to also, right, try to get a handle on why there are some issues that are still out there. How many of you have actually read this original Bitcoin blockchain white paper? Show of hands, comments, probably not too many people. And it's not hard to read. It's about 9.5 or so pages long. And the first 5 pages aren't complicated at all. It's a outline basically for how blockchain works, why it was built in the first place, and the role of Bitcoin. And Veronica has read the Bitcoin white paper and Chainlink white paper. Nice. Well, and actually, just as a quick little anecdote there, any project or platform, be it blockchain based or be it a individual crypto asset, I would always push to read the white paper. Even if you aren't able to understand everything in it, that's fine. But to understand it, to understand the idea of it and the goal of it and the purpose of it is a good first step to understanding actually the underlying platform. Okay, so to add some more context here, right? How blockchain fits in to other ways of storing information, right? So all of us are probably most familiar with a sort of corporate entity, centralized entity, right? Be it a college, corporation, other entity, basically housing our information, be it in accounting, be it SAP, QuickBooks, or Home Depot, Target, Amazon, Uber. All of those entities hold our information for us. Great. What's the main issue, though? Is that all of those entities can be hacked and have been, right? Because I can be a big entity, be it Facebook, Target, Home Depot, and have hundreds of people working on the IT side of things. But it's basically the exact same thing of having a condo, an apartment, a house, townhouse, whatever, and then opening up that front door to your home. And on that wall, you open the door, and on that wall, you actually have a plan of your house. And on that plan, that plan has a giant red X drawn over a certain room where all of your cash, your watches, passports, baseball cards, whatever you're into, are actually held. So everybody knows where all of that stuff is. Exact same concept here, right? That having the best IT team in the world, the best firewalls, antivirus, all the rest, is only as good as the individuals who are in charge of actually running it. And so as we have actually seen over and over again, a entity operating in this manner can be hacked and has been hacked. So then, okay, fine. So I don't want it all here, but what if I just copy it everywhere? Decentralized, right? If anybody has ever had to work on a project with other people, I know, terrible, with other people on a project, and you are operating off of one shared document, sheet, database, whatever, there's always going to be one person who downloads it offline, works on it offline, and then either one re-uploads it, calls it version 2, or has it offline and actually never uploads it. So having it that way isn't actually going to work all that well either. Blockchain is really a hybrid of those two, right? Trying to bring the ability of a wide range of members to update data while also having that data integrity at the core of the idea. All right. So with that context as to where blockchain actually fits here, right? Oh, sorry. So there are 5 components that I would try to hone in on as items that honestly make blockchain pop, and that honestly have it operate in a different manner from other IT platforms out there. So the idea of a consensus protocol, and I could talk on this for easily 2 hours, but the idea of any consensus protocol is to really try to get a group agreement as to what data is being uploaded onto the blockchain. Okay. So every block, and again, each block is basically a batch of individual transactions. Each block has to be verified or approved by a number of those members of that network. It can be half, it can be 2/3, it can be 80%. But in any case, on a public blockchain, private blockchain, which I'll highlight next, on any one of those options, there has to be some kind of agreement prior to the data being uploaded. And then, even better, as this data is uploaded onto that blockchain, everybody who's a member of that network gets a up-to-date copy of that record in real time, meaning that everybody is always online, right? Plugged in, online, or on, right? And I do have some dogs in the house, so if you hear them, sorry about that. And so then, as a direct sort of add-on to that, so every single block has been approved by either half or 2/3, 80%, some group-based level of agreement. Everybody who's a member of that blockchain has a up-to-date copy of the actual history now. So then, as a direct add-on to that, there is no one point of failure, right? There is no one entity to hack or to breach. So now it's a much more, it's a much stronger network, because even if half of it goes offline, even if every member of that network node, I'll come back to that in a minute, even if every node except one is offline, that underlying network is still viable, because everybody has that up-to-date record as it happens. And then from a operational point of view, a big upside to having blockchain-based transactions is that in order to actually get the information onto the blockchain, there has to be a consistent format as to how that data is actually uploaded, be it Excel templates, be it AP transactions, be it artwork, images. All of that has to be outlined up front. So it's a lot easier to then monitor and to track the blocks of information and those individual transactions as they are uploaded. And then the whole conversation around encryption and hashing, which I know that I always have to be careful these days talking about hashing and hash, because I know that there are some states where they have some cannabis products that are on the up and up, totally legal. But for our context right here, hash IDs are basically the ID number, right, for each block. And each hash ID links that block to the block before it and the block after it. So basically that hash ID, so if you want a parallel, right, the hash ID is the chain in the blockchain, right? That forms that chain that actually connects each block to each other block on that chain. Okay, and so great, this all sounds good, right? Well, there's always a catch, right? And the catch here is that there are hundreds of iterations of a blockchain, right? Being that umbrella term again. And they're all programmed, developed, maintained by individuals either on their own, open source project, or at an enterprise. So there are a whole host of options out there. So I've tried to break it down into the top 4 buckets of options out there. But how many of us right here, right now, would actually feel confident having a conversation either in the classroom, to our colleagues, to our bosses, to external people, trying to explain what a underlying blockchain is and how it works? I feel comfortable, but I don't know how many other folks here would. Okay, well, hopefully by 12:30 today, all of you already feel comfortable doing so. All right. Let's see, somebody jumping in the chat. Veronica, thank you for your hand raise. Given your easy explanation. Well, and I believe it was Einstein who actually said that if you're unable to explain an idea in a easy to understand manner, you don't really understand it either. So, oh, thank you for that. Okay, somebody else dropping in the chat. Yep. Okay. So we've outlined blockchain sort of at a high level, but there are different flavors out there. Okay. So a public blockchain is the blockchain that everybody thinks about off the top, right? It's this open source network anybody can join. And if you join a public blockchain, you are a node. A node is a member of the blockchain. And the nodes are not you as the individual, it's your computer. So as a member or a node of a public blockchain, you can have different roles in that blockchain. And sort of those roles are only capped by your investment in the hardware, the software, power consumption needed to process transactions, authorize transactions, mine for a Bitcoin, which I'll come back to in just a moment. But the idea of a public blockchain is also where the whole conversation on is Bitcoin good for the environment? Is it bad for carbon outputs, right? That's where this whole conversation comes from. And it's only linked to public blockchains because of that consensus model used on a public blockchain is proof of work. Okay. So basically at a underlying level, right? It's a math problem that in order to add any new blocks onto the blockchain, right? They have to be confirmed. They have to be validated. They have to be authorized as part of that consensus model. And so in order to have that all work, there's basically a hard math problem that has to be solved first. And so all of that is the proof of work model. Okay. And so then as these problems are solved and these answers are, in essence, uploaded onto the blockchain for other nodes to check, blocks are added. All seems, nice and easy. Well, it's not easy. And so that's where the whole conversation on, the power consumption used by blockchain, the carbon outputs of blockchain and Bitcoin, that's where it all comes from, right? Because it is the way that has the most data integrity, but it's also the most complicated, hardest to ramp up to enterprise capacity, and it is complicated, right, to actually use to process transactions. Okay, so we have the idea of a totally public blockchain, basically Bitcoin and ETH, okay, Ethereum. But as enterprises analyze blockchain and said, hey, so it's traceable, transparent, and hard to hack. All sounds pretty good to me. So basically the idea of a private blockchain is a hybrid approach and is the approach used by the vast bulk of organizations trying to get blockchain to work inside of their company or inside of their own networks, right? Suppliers, customers, vendors, all the rest. And so the main alterations here is that I still have a underlying blockchain, but it's organized now by the organizing firm or a panel of organizing firms. And so now we, as the organizers, build out the underlying blockchain, and then I can add people to that blockchain because it's a private blockchain now. So I can add individuals to it, I can add firms to it, and then also I can choose what levels of access those individuals or firms have. So it's a lot easier to now authorize transactions because I know who's a member of that blockchain, as opposed to on a totally public blockchain, anybody could be there. Criminals, other other bad actors could be a part of that public blockchain because there is no check. But on a private blockchain, I build it out and I invite members to be a part of it. And so that's honestly where the enterprise conversation started. and really is, I would say, mainly at the current moment, because it's easier to process transactions, less complicated, less power, easier to ramp up to that enterprise level of capacity. And from a audit point of view, I can build out controls on this a lot easier, because again, I know who's there, and I know who's in charge of authorizing access. Okay, so and then two other types here, but two big ones, public and private. And there's hybrid, federated, all kinds of other ones out there. But I was trying to sort of break it out into the four big areas that I've seen the most. And so a other area that I've seen used mainly for sort of governmental agencies is a public permission to blockchain, meaning that almost anybody can, run a query or a search on it to pull up data on that blockchain, but only one or two organizations or some individuals at those firms have the option to go in there to either add data, edit data, all the rest. So it's basically like a internet search engine, be it Google, Bing, or other ones out there, meaning that anybody can access that information stored there, but only that organizing entity or that group of entities can edit or add, take down, or upload new information onto that platform. And it's been mainly used so far in how government agencies are trying to onboard blockchain, mainly to be in compliance in a more straightforward manner as a result of any FOIA asks, right? The Freedom of Information Act. And somebody's in the chat, e.g. IRS. IRS is a big player out there. So just as a quick caveat here, anybody who owns crypto or who has a family member, a colleague, a boss, partner who owns crypto, the IRS has gotten very, very good at tracking transactions in crypto. If you had brought up the IRS back in 2018, I would say that they really aren't yet up to speed. But now at the end of 2020, they are really up to speed. So if anybody is doing transactions in any crypto, the IRS is going to be aware of it. And somebody in the chat, Veronica, came in again. Proof of stake is what Ethereum is going to switch to. Yep, absolutely. The infrastructure bill is, that's an issue with how profitable to be node operator. If they cared about the environment, they should tax proof of work miners. So that's a whole other conversation there, because as it turns out, about half of the power used to mine Bitcoin is from renewable energy sources. So, which is a lot more as opposed to companies like Facebook, Netflix, or other big firms out there. So it's a very interesting conversation, and it all honestly is going to come down to where the power is ultimately sourced from and the attitude of the policymakers out there. And then just a quick note here on the consortium model. Basically, it's a group effort to pool resources, talent, capital to build out a common industry platform to try to handle issues as they pop up. So I haven't seen too much yet in this space. There are some applications currently underway out there, but at the time being, right, most big enterprises, most large enterprises are trying to build out their own blockchains in-house. All right, so how's everyone doing so far? Have a headache yet? Okay. Okay, and to add some more context, right, because it's easy to, on the one hand, get sort of lost in the proof of work, proof of stake, proof of elapsed time, proof of all the rest. There are about 22 options out there. On the one hand, it's easy to be lost there. On the other hand, as we're going to talk about in a moment, it's also easy to be sort of lost in the headlines around Bitcoin prices. But it's a much bigger conversation, right? And Forbes has been publishing their blockchain 50 list each year since 2018. So basically, these are large enterprises in a whole range of industries using blockchain as a core component of their operations, or as a core component of a new business line, model, operating segment. And they're large companies, right? $1 billion in revenue and worth $1 billion out in the marketplace. So I pulled up just a handful of items here. Boeing, aerospace company, is actually partnering via their sort of corporate investment arm to build out a blockchain-based way to track drones and to monitor drone flights and ultimately airplanes also. And as a person who was on his first flight last week, since actually February 2020, I can argue that there are some updates that could probably be helpful out there. And Coinbase, obviously, have to have it. It's the only US listed SEC registered entity to trade, hold, buy Bitcoin and other crypto assets out there. They're obviously using it, but also I also want to point out here that they're partnering with a mainstream company that all of us know, Visa, to issue credit cards, debit cards. So it's incredibly easy to almost accidentally get involved in Bitcoin payments and other crypto payments from a individual point of view or a entrepreneurial point of view too. IBM, big firm, all of us know on it. And so here's honestly where blockchain is moving out of the fringe and into the mainstream. Basically, IBM is building out, and they have it built out, and they're currently actually rolling it out, a blockchain-based platform to help individuals and their employers track their COVID-19 status in terms of tests, vaccinations, all the rest. And obviously, it's a hot topic, and it's going to be an issue and a piece of information that I would argue all of us are going to have some confidence in going forward, right? In terms of having access to it, and in terms of also trusting the records linked to it. So it's moved again off of the Bitcoin area only into mainstream issues that are impacting all of us on a everyday basis. LVMH. So for anybody here who's a fan of the finer things in life, right? Louis Vuitton, Gucci, although no, I think actually Gucci is its own company. I don't know too much about this actual sort of product line, but I thought it was very, very interesting to really see how this high-end sort of fashion company basically has actually built out their own in-house blockchain model to help crack down on counterfeit goods. So it really has a lot of applications outside of only crypto. And so that was the point of trying to include a handful of firms out there. How is blockchain used to identify COVID vaccine? Excellent question. And I'm just going to I think I hear some background coming through, put everyone else on mute. So that question was from Paula. Okay, Paula. So I've gotten both doses of Pfizer. Great. All that I have for that is a card, right? That's a paper card that has a little sticker on it. Great. That's not awesome going forward, right? Because I'm going to lose it. I know that 100%. And so I think it's a few actual states now have their own online platforms that entering in your, date of birth, SSN, name, all the rest, actually has a online portal to the Department of Health in those states. Jersey, Delaware, PA have those platforms out. I know that in NY they have the pass, right? The Excelsior pass. Great, but how do you trust that information? How does your employer trust that information now and going forward, right? Because it is more and more turning into a conversation on annual boosters, right? So how do we build out a platform that is able to be accessed right, by anybody, but also able to be trusted. That's where blockchain comes in, right? Because anybody can access these portals online, but by having a underlying blockchain platform to basically store, verify, and to help protect those blocks of information, right? Because again, earlier I was saying that any type of transaction can be stored in a block, right? Bitcoin is the headliner, but it can be any type of information can be stored in that block, including any COVID linked information. So that's probably the best way to try to add some sort of context in. So it isn't blockchain doing it by itself as a magic tool, right? It's enterprises reinforcing their own platforms, their own IT systems with a underlying sort of blockchain layer. And then I think, yeah, and then NBA, right? The NBA has actually been quite active in this space, right? Trying to use the blockchain to basically make their players be able to monetize their own images, their own videos, their own likelihoods easier via this whole NFT process. And I do have some content here at the very end on that. Don't worry, non-fungible tokens. Okay, so I do have some content on that, but that's where the NBA has been heavily active. And thank you. Is that something you can do today? I would say that yes, but that I think we are going to have to wait, probably in terms of having the blockchain based applications. I think we are going to have to wait until we sort of get over this hump in terms of trying to get folks have their first dose, a dose 2, and then try to get this first round of boosters out of the way, right? Because right now, obviously, the main push is to get vaccinations out the door, and then going forward, obviously, to try to reinforce the current records. And then Walmart. So if anyone's interested in any more context on this, go online and put Walmart, IBM, Mangoes. It's an excellent application of this, and it's from 2018, but it really does highlight just how powerful blockchain could be. Meaning that a company like Walmart, whose whole business model is to put stuff from here to here. That's their whole model, right? It would take them a week to actually trace back any, it would take them a week to trace back a mango on their shelves to its source, pre-IBM blockchain. Afterwards, 2.2 seconds. So a week to done. That's a great example, and it's from 2018. So obviously now it's almost common knowledge in some circles, but it really is a powerful example of how a underlying blockchain can do a lot more as opposed to just Bitcoin. But everyone's here for Bitcoin, probably, right? So any conversation on blockchain crypto, you have to talk about Bitcoin because it's the headliner. It's the biggest, baddest, oldest one out there. So Bitcoin, right? But a key point here, right? And it's an item that I have to say more and more currently, which is I think a little bit I'd say worrisome. That in order for anything to be classified as a cryptocurrency, it has to be linked to a underlying blockchain, right? Blockchain gives the crypto in cryptocurrency, right? So that's a key point to always keep in mind, right? That I can mint coins online, call it SSS coin. Great. How is that linked to a underlying blockchain, right? Because if it's not, then it's not actually crypto. Okay, so how is Bitcoin different from fiat? And fiat means any money issued by fiat, order, basically. You have dollar, the euro, the yen, yuan, pound, all the rest, issued by a governmental entity. So Bitcoin over here has a hard cap. 21 million, and to increase the overall supply of Bitcoin, there has to be effort exerted, right? There has to be time, energy, power exerted. So if we hop back to that earlier conversation on the proof of work and mining for Bitcoin, that is exactly this. That to add any new Bitcoin out to the marketplace, they have to be mined out of the ether, basically, out of the IT code. Okay. Bitcoin is not issued by a government or any sort of nation state. There is no border, and it is, again, linked directly to that underlying blockchain. As opposed to the dollar, where, as we all know, there has been quite a bit of conversation lately on the basically ongoing sort of quantitative easings, right? A trillion here, trillion there, and it all adds up to actual money, right? And so that is the main difference, right? That Bitcoin has a hard cap, takes investment and energy to add a new Bitcoin into the ecosystem, as opposed to any fiat currency, right? Be it the dollar or the euro, all the rest, are able to be printed basically without any investment or work needed up front. And for anybody out there, printers go burr. Yeah, I know, I had to put that in. And so how many of the Bitcoins have been mined? So that depends on who is asked, right? So the most consistent number that I've seen recently, and the most accurate data that I could find, was actually back in June, from June. And the estimate is that between 18.5 and 19.5 million Bitcoin have actually been mined. But there are also, and it actually varies. There are between 2.5 and 5 million Bitcoin lost on hard drives that are thrown out, that are stored in places where the owners don't have the passwords. So actually, the ultimate number of actual Bitcoin to be issued and to be out there actually trading is probably going to be closer to, say, 15 million, ultimately. And I see a question in the chat from Steve. Yes, I am personally invested in Bitcoin and about half a dozen other cryptocurrencies out there. Yes. Bitcoin to the moon, Omar, maybe, hopefully, right, for any holders out there. Let's see. But of course, the actual Bitcoin, is there a hard cap on the Bitcoin? Yes. Manfred, yes, there's only ever going to be 21 million Bitcoin, ever, right? And all of that is outlined in that original Bitcoin blockchain white paper. And any of the questions coming in here, and scarcity, as long as they keep printing the dollar backed by nothing, your best hedge is Bitcoin. So yes, but Bitcoin only has value, don't forget, because I can convert it into US dollars. So there are some Bitcoin maximalists out there who would argue of the actual dollar having no value going forward, but Bitcoin only has value because I can convert it back into US dollars at this point. USD is backed by the US government, legal tender. We are getting some good comments now in the chat. I love it. If I were to invest in the cryptocurrency, so I have a policy that I don't comment on coins or my own personal holdings in any public setting. So easier that way for everybody. I won't get yelled at either. Okay. And so in terms of the current sort of current status of crypto, fiat has been garbage till you got off the gold standard. Veronica, I love it. Okay. So the current status of any crypto out there, again, sort of echoing my earlier points, it really has gone mainstream. It's only being held back really by the lack of consistent and clear policies, regulation framework. And so even as we hit all-time highs in March and so we keep hitting higher highs and lower lows, right? There is interest on the increase, but there is still this sort of ambiguity out there that I would argue is the main obstacle to broader adoption right now. But there are a whole different class of crypto assets here. Okay, so there are any number of other assets out there, right? Because crypto is a overarching term, right? There's Bitcoin, decentralized, privately issued stable coins out there too, which are issued by their own private entities. So it's basically a form of privately issued crypto money. And there's this whole idea and this whole sort of ominous threat out there of a actual central bank digital currency, meaning that now there is this whole range of crypto assets, of crypto applications, from Bitcoin, which is untethered to anything, to actually now there are about 122 individual countries out there, including the U.S., that are currently working on issuing their own crypto asset. So it's the full gamut. So it's a very fast-moving space. There's a lot going on out there, and there are other applications out there. This idea of a smart contract, which is not smart nor a contract actually, but it's basically the application that lets blockchains talk to each other and talk to other IT applications. DAOs, DAOs are basically enterprises, corporations managed entirely on a blockchain. So, and if you are curious on that more, and I'll drop two things into the chat here: DAO Hack 2016 and DAO Wyoming are basically two places that if you're really interested in some more in-depth conversation on those, which is a fascinating topic, I think, right? Both from a enterprise point of view, but also how do you tax or how do you audit a entity that is not a entity? How do you do it? And let's see, I see John, I'm just catching this question. Why are NFTs and other crypto more based in Ethereum? Well, we are going to talk about NFTs in a moment, and I know we have time still, so I'm going to cover that in a bit, John, before I open up the floor for any other open questions, and I'll try to dig through the chat to answer any of the ones that I haven't gotten to. China, Evergrande. So the Evergrande, no, the main headline out of China is that basically last Friday morning, the PBOC, People's Bank of China, issued a edict and had outlined that anything mining, trading linked to crypto is banned. Although they have actually issued that exact same statement twice before, the current one kind of got headlines. So I would say to hold off, wait and see how it ultimately plays out. Fees are too high, and what do I think the next big cryptocurrency would be? Well, as I had said earlier, I try to not comment on individual coins or tokens in any public setting, especially when I'm being recorded. So it's just easier that way for everybody. Okay, and so now non-fungible tokens, right? Which I know it's honestly really interesting to me, right? Because it burst out into the scene March of this year, and apparently it was worth almost $70 million. This artwork here. I'm no artist, so I don't understand, obviously, what art is, but why is this worth so much? What happened? And actually, what are NFTs, right? Because it peaked in March, and then after that sort of dipped down, but now in like the back quarter of the current year, it's a hot topic all over again, right? Why? So what actually happens, right, at this whole sort of Beeple auction? And basically there were two things that had happened. One, it was the first mainstream auction of a NFT ever. And two, it also happened to coincide with sort of part A, the unofficial opening of some art collectible time of year. Again, I'm no expert on that, but it was basically like opening day for art auctions, all the rest. So first one ever, opening season, and three, actually the artist himself, Beeple, is actually pretty high profile anyway. So it was the first one ever, so buzz, excitement, all the rest. It was opening day for the art auction houses, and three, the artist being auctioned off, basically his work being auctioned off, was relatively high profile anyway. Okay, but what exactly is a NFT? Non-fungible token. And for anybody who's in the accounting program here knows what the word fungible means, right? Cash is always fungible, means that a dollar is a dollar, right? But also a Bitcoin is a Bitcoin, and an ETH is an ETH, and a Dogecoin is a Dogecoin, right? So coins and tokens are often fungible, meaning that I can trade one back and forth because each one is exactly the same. But for a non fungible token, that's not true, right? So each NFT is linked directly to a underlying asset, and they're all different, right? One, so I cannot trade them back and forth on a equal basis back and forth. One, two, they're always going to be linked to a off blockchain asset, be it artwork, an image, a video clip, items like that that are off chain. And then three, I cannot chop up a NFT and then use it as a medium of doing business. I can chop up dollars into quarters, dimes, pennies. I can chop up Bitcoin into 100,000 pieces. But a NFT, it was not built to be used as a currency. The whole point of it, it was built and marketed and rolled out as an asset. And so that's the main alteration here. And it really does come in handy in terms of any sort of fakes, counterfeits, items like this. And so just in terms of other questions that are being asked more and more, how do you actually understand the actual rights of these NFT owners and the individuals or firms who mint these NFTs, right? All of that is still a open area. I know I was just on a call yesterday for 2 hours trying to hash out how to get a current market valuation for a NFT. The answer is there are some options out there, but there is no hard answer yet. So it's a very open area, but basically it's trying to help creators, help owners try to monetize their intellectual property. But I do want to hone in here quickly before I open the floor for any questions. That there's a ton of buzz out there. The NBA has NFTs. Tom Brady has NFTs now. Love him or hate him, he's also now out there in this space. But as the owner of the NFT, I don't own the asset. I own the token itself, right? And so now there are 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different assets. The asset itself, and then the tokens that are minted off of that asset. So all of that is, again, adding to the ambiguity out there as to how these assets are ultimately going to function. But I think it's a very interesting area, and I'm very interested to see how it's going to evolve going forward. But with all that said, I did want to just have some hyperlinks here for any educators here who are on the call who I haven't bored to tears yet. I do have some articles here out of the Journal of Accountancy, all of which I actually wrote. So obviously I have to have those here on this topic, and some other external resources on this stuff for our own education and for adding into courses. And again, if there are any of you who are interested, I'm currently teaching 2 grant-based courses at Lehman on blockchain, crypto, all the rest, and I have a MBA level 1 on the docket for the upcoming term. So I'm going to open the floor up now for any questions, comments, or any jokes, either on me or any other content. All right, Thomas.
Yes, hello. Thank you for speaking today. I really appreciate it.
Sure, absolutely.
I have a question. I have a 2-part question, actually.
Okay.
So the first part is, so over the years, we've seen China ban crypto in different ways. So they restricted a bunch of different things like mining, and recently they banned transactions. Do you think, what's your take on that? And then part 2 would be, do you think it's a way to decrease competition for their own digital currency that they're coming out with?
Yep. I mean, well, personally, I would argue that the bans on crypto are part of a bigger crackdown on any of their gaming, entertainment, IT companies lately. Over the last half year or so, Alibaba, Tencent, Baidu, Weibo have all been basically sort of brought to heel by the government. And so the banning of crypto transactions and mining now is a add-on to that. And also, yep, absolutely. I mean, the powers that be in China are actively pushing their own crypto yuan project. And so, yes, obviously trying to not have other options out there is hopefully going to make to them, hopefully have their project work better. Yeah.
Okay, awesome. Thank you.
Sure. With all of the institutional in investment, do you think we'll have a Bitcoin ETF approved? I hope so, but I've been having that exact same conversation since about 2018. So I would say hopefully soon, that having basically all of the heavy hitters, Fidelity, JP Morgan, Goldman Sachs, basically pushing for that now should help sort of push it over the hump, hopefully soon. John, yes.
I have a question. I have a similar question. I saw Professor Han also asked this. It's based on the credentials of making a new cryptocurrency.
Okay.
So when it comes to like creating like new cryptocurrencies, like you see sometimes people will come out with like those meme coins and stuff. Like, what exactly are the credentials like that? Like you have to do like how would somebody set up a cryptocurrency, and what prevents them from like manipulating the price by like buying it and selling it to themselves and then trading that in for like Ethereum and like making US dollars off of that? Like, how is that preventable?
Sure. So what I would say there is that the part one to your question, right? How to create your own coin. So just a quick anecdote. Back in August, there was a site listed, and I cannot think of it now to save my life. But if you follow up with me, I'll follow up with you. I was able to actually mint a Sean Stein Smith token. It took about 5 minutes. So it's very, very easy to mint your own coin, right? Because there are any number of entities out there that are operating to do that exact thing, and it's normally for vanity or for fun, right? But in terms of your part two on some of the pump and dump risks, yeah, I mean those are absolutely risks out there. But I would say that if you do want to add some context in there, I don't know how much you know on the ICO bubble, right, from 2018. that's probably a excellent place to start getting some context on that. And the SEC and CFTC basically after that really have upgraded their tactics and their tools to help crack down on those exact items. So
I'll
I mean,
definitely read more into it.
Yep. Yeah. And the ICO bubble 2018. It was interesting to be there. So certainly. And I see somebody in the chat, Paula, so these coins, you hold them in your asset, or is it virtual and intangible? Yes. So in terms of holding crypto, they're all intangible assets. I don't agree to actually do the accounting for them as intangible assets, but the coins themselves, yes, are intangible. Correct. And Tom, did you have a yes?
I had another question. I'm sorry.
No, no problem.
How do you how do I phrase this? So the gas fees for Ethereum are very high. How do you decrease the gas fees so it can crypto can compete with things like MasterCard and Visa?
Sure. So how do you pay the ETH fees? What do you pay them in, Tom?
USD
or ETH, right?
or Ethereum, yeah.
Right. So actually, that actual question and absolutely, Veronica, the whole push towards this ETH 2.0 is to address that issue. But actually, the whole sort of price of the coin and the cost of transaction is a item that I always call sort of the crypto price paradox, right? That as the value of the coin in question, be it Bitcoin, be it ETH, be it other blockchain native tokens, goes up in actual value, if there are mining fees, gas fees payable in those tokens, it actually costs more to use it as a currency. And so I would say that ultimately the only way to sort of get those fees back down to a more manageable level to in turn encourage individuals and firms to use crypto as a medium of doing business is to upgrade the underlying blockchain, right? Lightning network on the Bitcoin network, payment channels, off-chain transactions on the Bitcoin blockchain, and then ETH 2.0 are both efforts built out of that issue, right? That they're trying to upgrade the basic processing speed of those platforms to handle transactions at those higher levels with a lower fee base. So what I would say there is that I'd say wait about 12 months or so. And I would argue that those ETH fees and the gas fees are going to drop by a bit anyway. So.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. And we got some other people raising their hands here. Who wants to hop on first? Natalie?
Yes, how are you? Thank you so much for being here. Two questions. One, would you mind sharing your slides with us, or at least the hyperlinks so we can access them in a better way and get more information? And the second one, how would you trade the Bitcoins for tax purposes? I'm not sure if you discussed that, but I've been having trouble with my internet connection, so that's why I wanted to ask.
Sure. So yes, I will absolutely have these out there for you all. And in terms of trading Bitcoin for tax purposes, so I have good news and I have some bad news. Good news is that it's easy. Bad news is that every single time that there's any transaction involving crypto, you are going to owe income taxes on it. So in terms of trading it for crypto purposes, I mean, there is no good way. Probably the best way to try to minimize your taxes linked to crypto is to try to minimize your active trading, right? Or to put it in a qualified investment opportunity fund, which is a whole other topic for a whole other conversation. I could follow up with you on that if you would like, but the best way to minimize taxes linked to crypto is to try to keep trading down to a minimum, because anytime, right, that any crypto, be it Bitcoin or any of the other thousands of coins out there, are traded, used, bought, sold, there's always going to be a income tax impact to it.
Thank you so much. I
Sure.
would love to have more information on that too.
Absolutely. Everyone's going to get a copy, don't worry. Isabella. And Paula, if you want a let's see, simple explanation, there are books in that dummy series, but I also know that IBM has a free online book, Blockchain Basics, and I believe they're up to version 3.0 at this point, but it's free online, and it's written by IBM, so obviously it's on the up and up. And then Anna, do we pay taxes on unrealized gains? No, not yet, but there is but there's talk on that topic happening right now about having investors over certain income levels pay taxes on those unrealized gains, which ultimately will probably end up being for everybody. Liam, had your hand up, sir?
Yeah, I had a question on the gold standard. Did you say that you were a fan of it?
What the
When the dollar was on the gold standard?
Well, so I would not say that I was a fan of it because I wasn't born yet. So I don't know how it all actually was back then.
Well, the idea of it.
So yeah, so the idea of having currencies backed by either math or by a asset does strike me as a lever to try to keep government outlays, spending, the budget, the debt more controlled, as opposed to just having it untethered to anything.
Well, is it fair to say that had the Fed been on a strict gold standard in 2008 when Lehman failed, the constraint on its ability to lend could have led to a collapse of the financial system and a second Great Depression? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I would say that depending on who was asked, I mean, the whole financial system did actually collapse, Liam, and actually 08 and 09, it was the worst economic collapse ever since 29. So all of that happened pretty much anyway. So all of that ultimately, I think would have happened. It was honestly not so much linked to the actions taken by the Fed, which at the time I believe had to be done to keep the pipes open, basically. But it was the activities at the mortgage lenders, financial institutions, home buyers too, basically packaging, chopping up mortgages and other financial instruments that were not understood by anyone, right? The bankers, mortgage lenders, or the homeowners themselves, that ultimately caused all of the other issues. Okay, and I thought I saw somebody else's hand go up. Let's see. I saw it come up. Yes.
I had my hand up. So I was like under the impression that cryptocurrency is like a independent owned and the government has no affiliation with it. But you made mention that like in the future, like they will be able to track it. So is there any explanation, like any more explanation on
Sure.
that?
That's a good question, Michelle. So in terms of having crypto not be controlled or owned or governed by any government, it's always important to keep in mind that crypto is a umbrella term, right? Like baseball or coffee is a umbrella term, and there are any number of versions, flavors of it out there. And so while there are crypto out there like Bitcoin and Ether who are not governed or controlled by any governments, all of them are able to be tracked, right? Because every single transaction on crypto uses the internet and IP addresses. So it's always easy to track where these actually go. So in terms of being trackable, all of them are able to be tracked. absolutely 100%. But in terms of having no connection to the government, that only applies to sort of the original crypto, like Bitcoin, and any privately issued coins or tokens, like Tether, Paxos, all the rest. But there are currencies being issued right now by governments that are sort of a crypto fiat hybrid. And there are, I believe, over 120 countries working on that project or on those types of efforts as we speak. So there is a whole range of crypto between unconnected government and then directly issued and controlled by a government. But in any case, they're all able to be tracked.
Oh, okay. So in other words, you could say Bitcoin, because it's not like the government doesn't have any affiliation with it, they won't be able to tax Bitcoin. Can we say that? Or
No. No. I would say that if you had asked me that back in 2018, maybe. Now I'm a CPA, so everyone should always be honest and transparent on their income taxes. But in 2018, probably the IRS wasn't really on top of it, but now 100% they are. And I know individuals who are relatively high up at 2 crypto tax companies whose companies actually were hired and brought into the IRS to help them build out their own in-house platform to track any crypto transactions. And they've issued subpoenas to Kraken, Circle, Coinbase, going all the way back to 2015. So they are very much on top of it.
okay, thank you so much.
Sure, absolutely, absolutely, Michelle. And in the chat, real quick, yes, you did have to check that box on the 1040. Yeah, but you only have to check it if you were actively trading. So if your only activity in crypto was actually buying crypto in fiat, you did not technically have to check it. I would always say it's always in your best interest to be as transparent as you can dealing with the IRS. And to it with Omar, we have Stephen. Crypto is in direct competition with fiat. So what if the government makes it very tough for transactions? Well, then frankly, the people and the capital and the IP, right, the intellectual property linked to those projects will just go elsewhere. I mean, the future of transactions is going to be crypto linked. I don't know how ultimately, but it is going to be linked to blockchain and to crypto because all of those transactions are faster, cheaper, traceable, and transparent. So it is going to be augmented by blockchain in some capacity. And if approved as a citizen, you can claim El Salvador as your home. Okay, yeah. Okay. You can, but I would not want to be your tax rep trying to outline that to the IRS. But Omar, yes, that's absolutely correct. For now, although I have heard from some folks that are on the ground there that everything is not going as perfectly as you might think otherwise. But items like that always happen. Okay, were there any other questions or any comments for me? Because I do know that I am at time actually. So if there aren't any other questions or comments, don't know if Carolyn is still here to walk us out of here.
Yep.
But
of course. Yes. Okay, so thank you so much, Sean. This was incredibly informative, and it was really a great presentation. I want to thank all the professors that came, all the students, and the members of the community. A special thanks to Barbara Abelees and the Abelees family and the WCC Foundation that make this possible.